Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and as we turn the page on 2020 and head into 2021, I hope everyone's having a safe and happy holiday seasons. Here on the channel, we're celebrating this with the 12 Days of Christmas special featuring 12 separate top 5 lists related to the game Total War 3 Kingdoms. And after spending the first 6 days looking at different ways to improve the game's mechanic and gameplay, our final 6 days will be focused on characters. And today, we're going to be looking at the top 5 characters that I believe need to get artworks and character upgrades in terms of skill tree for the faction of Jin. Now, previously we looked at the 3 main kingdoms for a game called 3 Kingdoms, and the final major faction that we're going to cover here is Jin, because Jin did unite the 3 kingdoms and herald in a new dynasty. So we're going to be focusing on them as a major faction, and then tomorrow we'll be shifting to minor faction characters, as in the top 5 characters that belong to factions that are not really one of the dynasty factions, and then finally closing out this list with our top 5 female characters that have not been covered so far in any of the other lists. So to kick things off today, we'll be starting with one such female character in Zhang Chunhua, who is the wife of Sima Yi. Now obviously if we're going to see a Jin faction feature in the game, as you have later chapter packs that shift the story from the 3 kingdoms toward where 8 princesses in the game, you're going to have Sima Yi as an independent faction, maybe as a subject to a bigger Cao Wei empire, and you can plan your own coup. Now if Sima Yi is going to be a faction leader with his unique faction abilities, then Zhang Chunhua as his wife would definitely be featured here. And not only is she just a wife of a main character, she is actually pretty significant historically as the mother of Sima Shi, Sima Zhao, as well as another son and daughter. And even the daughter married very well, as she was married to Xun Yu's grandson. And altogether, she was a very capable wife, coming from prestigious clans. Her father was a minor official in the same commandery that Sima Yi's clan is from, so nothing too significant there. But her mother's side, Zhang Chunhua's mother, comes from the Yang clan of Taiyuan, which is a very powerful clan throughout the Eastern Han dynasty. We talk a lot about how prestigious the Yuan clan is, how they had 四世三公, or 4 generations with 3 different Grand Excellency position. Well, the Yang clan is much more prestigious than even the Yuan clan, because the Yuan clan really got started with Yuanan, heralding an age of about 4 generations of prestigious control in the court. But the Yang clan has been there since the beginning, and they had Grand Excellencies pretty much every generation throughout the entirety of the Han dynasty. So that's how prestigious the clan is, and Zhang Chunhua's mother comes from such a clan. So Zhang Chunhua has some status. So the Sima clan definitely did well finding her as a suitable wife for Sima Yi. And the two of them got along fairly well early on, as they had 4 kids together, as we mentioned. But later on, Sima Yi did favor some other concubines and neglected her in her old age, and that was a bit of a sad story for both her as well as her kid, as Sima Shi and Sima Zhao favor their mom quite well. But in the end, she lived out her final days in a separated manner from Sima Yi and died of old age. Now, if we look at how she's represented in artworks in many of the other games, whether that's Dynasty Warriors or Sanguosha or Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, what we see is often a very tough-looking woman with a dagger or sword. And the reason why this is her portrayal is because in the early days of Sima Yi didn't want to work for Cao Cao, so he pretended that he was sick and couldn't stand and walk. But one day at home, he stood up to save some books that were caught in the rain. And this was seen by one of the maids. And Zhang Chunhua was worried that the maid is going to spill the family secret, so she actually murdered the maid herself and pretended nothing was happening afterward. And this really shocked and also awed Sima Yi, who found out that his wife is quite capable after all. And she kind of passed on this tough, stoic, and decisive trait to her oldest son, who is going to be our next character here, as we'll move on to Sima Shi, who is the oldest son of Sima Yi. Now, Sima Shi is also quite capable as a court politician as well as a military commander, similar to his dad. He's probably one of the better suited leaders of the time, given that he was calm and collected and also very ambitious, and he was both strong in terms of dealing with political matters in the court as well as dealing with military matters. Now you can see in the artwork portrayals of him that he has usually some sort of eye covering or some sort of scar under his eye, and the reason why is that he had a tumor that grew near his eye and it caused a lot of issue for him, and in the end he actually died due to complications from this tumor, where the tumor grew so bad that it popped one of his eyeballs out, and the pain and the treatment from that caused his death. So that's why you see in a lot of artwork he has this scar or patch around his eye. And Sima Shi's greatest contribution would be helping out his dad with the coup, as he was the one who harbored and trained thousands of death-sworn guards that they used to take down the Wei regime when part of the Wei court went out for a tomb sweeping event. And even though he and Sima Zhao was told by their dad that coup was happening the night before, he was very calm and collected about that fact and was able to carry out the orders without any issues, where Sima Zhao was kind of panicking and going crazy about the fact that the dad is going to throw a coup. And the fact that he was so stoic, calm, and decisive also really surprised Sima Yi in that aspect. So Sima Shi was quite talented. Unfortunately, he did die due to the complication of his tumor around 48, I believe, which is not young, but it's also not old. And when he died, he left the fate of the Sima clan, which is still not determined at that time, because the coup that Sima Yi threw wasn't one to put himself in power, but one to just preserve his power at court, as the Cao regime went on to rule for many more years after that point. It was just to ensure that the Sima clan would be in full control of the court, similar to how Cao Cao had full control of the Han court. Now, when Sima Shi died, the power went to his younger brother Sima Zhao. And the reason why this happened is rather complicated, because Sima Shi ended up marrying one of the Xiahou clan's granddaughters. He married Xiahou Yuan's nephew's daughter. So Xiahou Shang's daughter, Xiahou Wei, and they had 5 kids together, all girls. So 5 daughters for Sima Shi, no sons. And he ended up adopting one of Sima Zhao's sons, Sima Yu, as one of his own. And that's going to cause problem later on with 8 Princes. And if you're curious about how that comes about, go check out the lore series about 8 Princes. But so when he died, he had no real son, and the one son that he adopted is actually Sima Zhao's son, and they were all rather young. So passing on the clan to his younger brother Sima Zhao was definitely a good choice, and Sima Zhao, being also very capable himself, didn't disappoint, as he eventually would usurp the Cao Wei regime and become the kingdom of Jin. And under his guidance, he was able to eventually take down the kingdom of Shu, uniting 2 of the kingdoms before passing the kingdom on to his son Sima Yan, who would be the first emperor. So Sima Zhao here is obviously the younger brother. He tends to be portrayed as slightly craftier and slightly more evil compared to his stoic and more capable older brother. And in some of the game art, you see him kind of like a strategist. In his Romance of the Three Kingdom art, he really reminds me of a younger version of Cao Cao for some reason. But regardless, he would be a key addition, given that he would eventually give birth to Sima Yan, the first emperor of Jin. And all these would be great transition pieces from the Three Kingdom chapter packs into the 8 Princes chapter pack, as Sima Yan's kids are the ones who are the 8 Princes. And we're not going to talk too much about what these sons did. That can take forever. Just know that these are very important figures, and it goes from Sima Yi, his wife, and his 2 oldest sons, who herald in the Jin dynasty. And if we're talking about sons and wives, we have to talk about Sima Zhao's wife, Wang Yuanji, which is a very popular figure in a lot of game, as she is, in my opinion, one of the most capable wives of this period. So Wang Yuanji's family is Wang Lang's family. Wang Lang is her grandfather. So Wang Lang currently already have his own faction and artwork in the game, and it wouldn't be very difficult to see him as a free LC in the future, where Wang Yuanji could perhaps be added in as his granddaughter in some timelines. And she was portrayed in history or recorded in history as a very capable student at a very young age. The Wang clan are very well-known scholars, so they taught their daughters all sorts of literature at a young age, and she was able to memorize many of the key literature works by age 8 or 9. And Wang Lang really liked this granddaughter, thinking that she can bring glory to the clan if only she was a boy. But she ended up doing the same regardless. And she was also known for her filial piety, as when her grandfather Wang Lang died, she tomb guarded for the family. And when her father died, she also tomb guarded the same case, which is a big deal in Confucian cultures. And when she was 15, she was married to Sima Zhao, and that's a good match. The Wang clan's pretty powerful, which made a good match for the Sima clan. And she went on to have multiple kids with Sima Zhao, including Sima Yan, who eventually becomes emperor, as well as Sima You, who she passed on to Sima Shi because Sima Shi didn't have any sons, as well as a few daughters, and she also helped raise some of Sima Zhao's other kids. So overall, a good wife figure. And when Sima Zhao later on became the king of Jin, she was obviously the queen of Jin, at least title-wise, Jin Wangfei. And she was very diligent in her job. She set great examples for her kid, not only through her own talent, but when she became Empress Dowager, because she would go on to outlive Sima Zhao. And when Sima Yan became emperor, she obviously becomes Empress Dowager. She made sure the imperial court, in terms of the inner courts, were run well and also not overspent. Ipoli was the one keeping Sima Yan in check, because we all know Sima Yan as this overindulgent emperor at the end of his life, where he had thousands of concubines and rode this goat cart to wherever the goat cart stopped. He would sleep there that night. But when Wang Yuanji was still alive, until up to about 268, I believe, not that late, he kept the court running well, and then he forbid luxurious good to be placed in court, and she even weaved her own cloth at court as an example that they need to worry about saving money. It's a new dynasty. So I think Wang Yuanji definitely deserves a place, and she would fit well because Wang Lang is also a faction in the game, so you can link some of these major clans together through some of these marriages, such as her. Then finally, for the last character, this one's going to be a little weird because I picked Jia Cong. Now, Jia Cong is only featured in Dynasty Warrior 9. I don't think he's featured in Sanguosha or Romance of Three Kingdoms, as he tends to be a super late character. And the reason why I picked him instead of a lot of other good choices, and there are a ton, because the first 4 we picked are all basically Sima Yi's family members. Jia Cong is the first one we didn't pick, and Jia Cong's clan eventually would have a character that's ready in the game in Jia Nanfeng, which, if you recall, is the empress when the 8 princes start. So Jia Cong's daughter eventually became the empress to Sima Zhong, who is the mentally challenged emperor that kind of triggered the 8 princes, and she ruled for a long time, and she's the one who tricked people like Sima Wei to betray Sima Liang and so forth. So the Jia clan is huge. His father Jia Da was official during the Cao Wei regime, and he was a loyalist. Jia Cong himself was a loyalist to Sima clan. He was the personal guard for Sima Zhao, and when Cao Mao, the emperor at the time, during the later periods of the Cao Wei regime, decided to try to remove Sima Zhao in a last-ditch effort and march his own imperial guards against Sima Zhao's residence outside the imperial palace, it was Jia Cong who led a group of guards to actually kill the emperor in the middle of the street in the capital, which is an insane move. And it kind of put Sima Zhao in a bad position, as he didn't want to usurp yet. So he kind of propped up a new emperor, but he must provide some sort of explanation of how his troops ended up killing the past emperor. And one of his advisors said, "We have to kill Jia Cong. He's the guy who led the men to kill the former emperor. If we kill him, we can blame it on him." But Jia Cong was so important to the Sima clan that Sima Zhao didn't do it. This was a move that he wasn't willing to do, as he valued Jia Cong immensely, so he ended up actually finding the exact soldier who actually killed the emperor and had him killed only, and Jia Cong was just fine, which is unthinkable, because usually you think people like him would just be a throwaway piece by their leader, and in this case, Sima Zhao kept him alive and valued him immensely. As you can see, his daughter would go on to actually marry Sima Yan's son, so that's probably a pretty key figure if we want to shift in the later periods between the current 3 kingdoms to 8 princes, or the later periods of the Jin dynasty and Jia Cong's family would definitely play a key role. So whether you include Jia Cong in the game or perhaps his father Jia Da first, I think they're all good fits. Jia Cong just happened to also be featured in Dynasty Warrior 9, so I thought I'd put him in here as he would make the best transition to 8 princes. Now, some of the other characters that we could have in this period are people like Xiahou Xuan, Xiahou Ba, who eventually also switched over to the Shu kingdom. So that could also be an interesting case, as Xiahou Xuan and Xiahou Ba were people who were kind of on par with Sima Shi, and when the Sima clan was starting to get power through their coup, many of the Xiahou clan either defected to Shu to save their lives or get killed, like Xiahou Xuan would eventually. And then you also have people like He Yan, who started the whole Xuan movement, which is kind of a philosophy movement during the Jin dynasty. Also someone who is the grandson of He Jin, another very interesting character that could be taken. And if you're wondering how He Jin had a grandson given that he was slaughtered by eunuchs, well, He Jin had a son who had a wife that became a widow after all that mess. And she already had a grandson already. He Jin was quite old. And when we talk about widows, Cao Cao actually took her in and married her and raised He Jin's grandson as his own son and let him keep his name. So He Yan was alive, and then he also eventually married one of Cao Cao's actual daughter. So that's a case where Cao Cao took a widow of his former commander's son's wife and then took in the widow along with her son. So technically now he's his stepson, and then later on liked the stepson's talent so much that he married the stepson to one of his actual daughters. Yes, it's a little messed up, but He Yan is definitely one of the key figures of the time, and these second generation characters should all be seen if we are going to see some sort of transition from the 3 kingdoms to the Jin period. So with that, we're just going to end our list here. And tomorrow we're going to come back and talk about some of the major characters from minor factions, people who are super talented but ended up serving the losers of the 3 kingdom conflict, the early warlords, so they didn't get a chance to shine, or perhaps they did get a chance to shine just with a different master. So in that case, we'll be showcasing them and describing who they originally worked for and who they ended up working for in the end. So hope you guys enjoy this one. See you guys then. Bye.